So I made my bones in TV literally because of strikes.
Right.
Jamie Kennedy Experiment was greenlit because of that early strike in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And then I sold more stuff to CBS in 2007, and, obviously it happened. When you talk about the WGA and the SAG strike, do you think the DGA left everybody out to hang and dry?
You know what? I don't have enough information to really comment on that.
Okay.
I've heard rumors, but I think what was happening at the time, I think the studios knew what was happening. They knew that they were running into this crisis, but they just let it ride, is what I think. I think they're just like, this is a great opportunity to just say, we're gonna take a moment of pause until we could get our shit together. And now they're realizing we still don't have our shit together. I don't know how we're going to get our shit together.
What do you think the SAG strike was actually beneficial, real? Like, or do you think it's a con?
I don't think it was a con, but you ask yourself, what good is a union if the studios are going to do their production outside the United States? And that's what they're doing. And that's the same thing that happened to the auto industry. It was the auto manufacturers started building their plants in Mexico. It's cheaper to make cars in Mexico than it is in the United States. And these streaming services, which have been taken over by tech, they're being gutted out, and they're trying to be made more efficient in a creative industry, which is probably one of the most inefficient industries, but it worked. The way it was, it worked.
So you have so many stats. I can start. I mean, you can start, but so let's just go. I'll ask you a question. So there was $1 billion or $2 billion announcement that Radford was going to. Before I say this, because I have to say something else, you Barnes. I talked to a very big actor who talked to one of the top 5 companies in town, and he said it's good that you're doing stuff in live. The guy is a live performer, and he said because in 5 years I don't know where acting's going to be.
Interesting.
And this was a huge person that said this, his company. And then I talked to another guy, and he was like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if we come down the hill and then we're doing our sitcom at CBS Radford. They're going to be a $2 billion expansion. I'm like, well, have you talked to Pat? I'm like, in my mind, have you talked to Patrick? I'm literally coming out of Terra Sushi going, what would the announcement is that you're going to come out of Studio City from your 3,000 square foot house and you're going to walk on a new set of a new Big Bang. But it doesn't make any sense to me.
It made sense back in 2021 when business was booming.
Okay.
So,
so this was an announcement that they announced.
Right. So when you look at, a lot of people have come to me and they're like, Patrick, you're full of shit because
who?
There's a lot of people. There are 2 types of people in Hollywood right now. People
cognitive dissonance,
the denial that what is happening is happening. It's all going to be better. It's all going to be because there's that hopeful optimism that runs through our industry that keeps everybody towing for decades. And then there's people who are like, holy shit, we are in a fundamental transition. I kind of lost my train of thought.
More than ever.
This is
radio to talkies.
This is radio to television.
But even more.
Because we now no longer do you have an audience that tunes into one place. You have an audience. The audience is now being completely diluted. Television, nobody channel surfs anymore. If you're gonna, people turn on their TV because for appointment viewing, I want to watch this show that came out on this day. I'm watching my show. I turn my TV off. I go back to scrolling. Scrolling is the channel surfing.
So so CBS or Radford said they were going to make a $2 billion expansion.
Right. So
how is that going to happen?
Well, it's happening because, and again, you just kind of have to back up and do a little critical thinking, So everybody's saying they're going to build these studios. These studios are being built right now. Yes, but a studio doesn't just get built overnight. You have to you have to get an architect. You have to get the EPA regulations. You have to do the surveys. All that takes years and years. So the announcement, let's use the Warner Brother Ranch, for example, that they're building. They tore it down.
One off of in Burbank.
Yeah, the one off.
So they're redoing it.
They flatlined it and they're building sound stages.
Which Universal did, which I assume is going to be all Peacock.
Right. No, so Warner Brothers sold the land to a real estate firm, and the real estate firm's going to own the sound stages, and they're going to lease it back to Warner Brothers.
But if nothing's being shot in California, what are they shooting there?
Well, the point is, when these studios got greenlit was back when content was having that bonanza period back in 2020, 2021, when there was just like, oh my gosh, we need all these sound stages because Netflix is just pumping out. It was when like steroids was injected into the film and TV industry. And so, of course, the money was flowing from Wall Street. So, of course, the idea of building more studios was a great idea. Nobody saw the crash coming in spring of 2022. Nobody saw it.
What was the crash?
The crash was really when Netflix first announced that they can't get any more subscribers, and their stock sank 35%.
Really?
That was when the alarm bells went off. It went completely under the radar. No, everybody kind of missed it. They're like, "Oh, Netflix is kind of running out of subscribers." But the fact is, that was a telltale sign to the other that the streaming model was not working.
Wait, but how many subscribers do they have?
Oh, I don't have their numbers. Netflix doesn't release their numbers.
No, they have like 100.
I don't have those numbers on me. So
you're saying they decline?
They didn't decline, but there's one point
they hit their peak.
You plateau.
Okay, they plateaued.
They plateaued, and all of a sudden it's like, this is as much money as we're gonna get. Like, we can't make any more money on this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit, we're in production. Is this sustainable? And then all of a sudden, about the same time, you just saw your Netflix rates just skyrocket. Remember Netflix was like $6.99 a month?
Yeah.
And now it's like some people I think are paying like $22.99 a month or something.
And they have a commercials for it.
And they have right. Okay. So that was when they kind of realized streaming shitting the bed. We blew up a model that worked perfectly for 70 years, an advertising revenue model, and in chasing. And what happened was, during the pandemic, these other companies, Disney and Peacock and Paramount, they saw what Netflix was doing, and everybody is now sitting at home watching television. So they're just like, break glass, smash things, don't look at, what is the Jurassic Park line that Malcolm says? They never stopped to ask themselves why. And
right.
They just did it. And they like, we have to mimic Netflix's model. And they did it, and they broke everything in its wake.
So, you could look on your phone, but I don't want to stop the momentum. It's probably like 150 million subscribers.
Something like that.
But you're saying but aren't they gaining in the world?
They are.
They have
look,
this whole neighborhood where you're at right now, yeah. Patrick, it's 5 huge Netflix buildings.
Oh, yeah. Netflix is not going away. No. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying in fact, actually, Netflix, out of all of the media conglomerates, is the only one that's actually doing better than the rest, because they don't have cable channels tied to them.
I'll tell you 2 things. So I had that meeting at Warner Brothers for a known property.
Yeah.
And they said, this is Warner Brothers now. I'm saying it, I don't care. They don't pitch Netflix until they send them a pitch packet.
Really? Interesting.
Warner Brothers.
Right. So
Warner Brothers.
They're at the heel. They're at the mercy of Netflix.
Which is insane.
Right.
Okay, that's one of 6 legacy companies.
Yes.
Number 2 is, I have also heard, you've been probably hearing, they're good for 2 years in terms of their content, Netflix.
Okay.
And number 3, the only people I know that are working steadily, but there's still constriction, is reality. So I know a woman inside of Netflix who's a Patrick type.
Right.
And she goes from show to show. It's what we call filler shows. These are great shows, but they just fill. But she's like, there's people being cut down all over.
Yeah.
So there's completely...
It really is kind of, and I think the feeling, and I have a few friends that work as executives at networks, and there's kind of like this feeling of like, when am I going to be taken to pasture? It's really kind of like, a lot of people are like, it's a waiting game, and maybe I'm just going to wait it out. Like, crazy shit's been happening. 2 weeks ago, the reason I was on Rafford was I was doing an interview with KCAL. Okay. And the reporter that
you're becoming the face of this.
Oh, thank you. Tell me more, Jamie.
No, but I'm a little annoyed that you didn't have the Netflix numbers right off the top of your head.
Sorry, dude. I'm not Rain Man, dude. I'm like,
So you sit with KCal.
So I'm with KCal, and then the reporter. We do this interview. It's great, and then she calls me literally 2 days later, and she's like, "So I was actually one of the layoffs from the Paramount layoffs."
No,
yeah.
After the interview,
2 days after the interview,
No!
48 hours after the interview, she's like, "I was laid off." And I also had another buddy who was an executive at Fox, and he was just like, "I like what you're doing." And then the next day, it's like, "I just got laid off. Keep going, Patrick."
Wow. Okay, out of 100 friends or associates or people in your circle, how many are out of work?
I would say out of 100 friends working in the industry, I would say 11 maybe.
11 are working or 11 are...
11 are working.
So 89% are out of work.
I would say in my field, yeah, that seems like an accurate number. And I'm having still conversations with former colleagues that I worked with years ago. And again, these are like people that brought me into the industry. These are like legends. And they're saying, "I'm out. I can't get anything. I'm trying to figure out how to pivot." The person that I know is the greatest reality editor of all time. He's like the Michelangelo of editors. Had to rent out his house and move back to Chicago because he can't afford it. Wow. This guy is like, this is the guy that, I said, "I'm not working 2 months." He didn't work. He was never out of work. Wow. He was just rolling on. And he is also one of the most brilliant, avid editors that I've ever seen. He could tell a story. Like, he's the person that every reality producer is like, I want Will on my team.
Is it because less opportunity or AI or what?
It's not.
Is it innovation?
I think it's a multitude of factors, and it's kind of a perfect storm of many things. One, reality TV is 20 years old. It's a worn genre. It's not exciting. It's not new. The new generations are not watching it.
But it's TikTok is reality TV to me.
If you can, but I consider TikTok social media.
It is, but it is
in its own
same
sense.
thing.
But
when you give the reality TV people, put it this way: there's so many annoying people on TikTok that I yearn for Bravo. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, but there's also here. I'll throw a statistic because you love it when I throw.
I do. I love it.
So 170 million Americans are on TikTok.
Okay, so more than about 50%.
Yeah, about half the nation, and that's more than that are watching TV right now.
Yeah,
yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
But TikTok is self-produced content, meaning I am doing my TikTok. A reality show has 30 to 50 staff members. So that's where I see the difference.
89% of your friends are out of work.
I would say that, yes.
How many of them left the city?
Well, I can't, I don't keep running tabs on everybody, but, a lot of people are
maybe 30%?
I would say, there was an exodus already. I know a few people that have moved back to their hometowns. Wow. There's just like...
But this isn't their home? They haven't made roots here forever?
I think a lot of people are kind of like, what's the point of LA if there's no business here?
No, there has been a ton. I know actors that have gone to different hubs.
Yeah.
Big stars. I'm pretty sure Stallone went to Florida. Mark went to Vegas. There's people leaving all over.
And I think most people that I know, if they left, they went to Georgia to try to maybe salvage a bit more, believing that, the grass is greener in Georgia. But if you speak to anybody in Georgia production, they're in the same boat. Anybody in New York production, we're in the same boat.
What's being produced in LA?
Well, in terms of reality, unscripted shows, it's only the flagship shows. I heard
Masked Singer.
I don't even think that anymore. I think it's like the Big Brother, Survivor. Somebody told me 9 of the 10 shows that are on air or being shot have been on the air for over a decade. So it's the flagship legacy shows that have the audiences. What they're not producing or what they're not building, they're not greenlighting any new programming. And I had a show with a network that I was pitching last summer. And it sat at the network for 2 months. And this was the best news I ever got with the show, and I'm kind of greasing my palms. I'm like, and the network is like, we love it. It's so great. It's such a unique format. We haven't seen anything like this. And I've been working on this project for 7 years, so I'm like finally foaming at the mouth, like this is it. And they finally came back at the end of the 2 months, and they're like, we love this. We hate to say this. This is not us. Our mandate coming from above is the only shows we can greenlight are shows that have a celebrity, like a major celebrity attached, or our intellectual property. We can't accept your format.
Yes, this I feel like everyone's going to be Disney-fied, meaning Disney will never make anything outside of their IP.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone wants to own their IP, and that's why Netflix beat everybody first, because they did a new thing with people's IP that they didn't know existed, and that's why Netflix has to make their own IP, because everyone can make their own streaming.
Right.
So that seems like a thing. Like,
it is a thing.
IP or
is
bust.
brand recognition.
Yes.
And that is because, again, you have these networks that are risk averse. They are trying to make sure, and the people running it are terrified, because you will never lose your job for saying no, but you will lose your job for saying yes.
100%. I had people tell me why when I would sell stuff, and then when it got less and less, and why I couldn't sell stuff, and it's like, you're not fireproof. Like, there were times when you did something with me, if it didn't work, okay, well, it was Jamie Kennedy. But then you have to be, but I didn't even know those jobs exist anymore, because so many of these people are out of the business.
Yeah.
And the constriction or contraction or whatever the word is happening so much. So Paramount laid off recently 15% of the whole company.
Whole company. I think it was like 5,000 workers, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
15%.
15%.
Where do you see them going?
That's the $1 million question. I don't think here's the problem. It's like, we first got to look at the problem before you could, like, you have to diagnose the problem before you could come up with a solution. What is the problem? Problem is these legacy companies, they just got too big and fat. They consumed all these minor companies. And then finally they got to a point where the companies that, were part of their franchise, that the mediums themselves were becoming outdated. Like, cable channel is a tax write-off now, but for Paramount, it's $6 billion. Warner Brothers is $50 billion in debt.
In debt?
In debt.
In debt?
Billion in debt. Warner Brothers Discovery.
How?
Cable.
Wait, how? What's the company worth?
Oh man, now you're throwing.
150 billion?
Probably. I mean more than that. Maybe. No, 150 billion. That's the entire industry.
No, Disney was worth.
TV is 150 billion.
No, more than that.
No, that was the investor at a conference just said TV in general, television as it stands now, is $150 billion industry. And I think the stats also for social media, for content creator industry, is right now 250 billion.
Makes sense.
So
you're saying so,
and I'm not saying film. I'm just saying television.